On December 2nd, 1805, near a little town called Austerlitz, Napoleon Bonaparte pulled off what many people still call the single greatest victory of his entire career. And this wasn't just any battle. It was a fight that didn't just end a war. It literally shattered an empire and redrew the map of Europe. So let's dive into how this absolute masterpiece of a strategy actually happened. Military historians don't just throw around comparisons like this. When they put Austerlitz in the same sentence as legendary wins by Hannibal or Alexander the Great, well, that tells you everything. This wasn't just a battle. It was pretty much the perfect execution of strategy and, more importantly, deception. And really, that's the big question here, isn't it? On paper, Napoleon should have been on the back foot, maybe even staring down a huge defeat. But instead, he completely wiped out the combined forces of Tsar Alexander I of Russia and the Holy Roman Emperor Francis II. So, how on earth did he pull it off? Okay, so to really get how brilliant this victory was, you first have to understand the massive risk Napoleon was taking. His whole situation in the winter of 1805 was, well, it was anything but safe. In fact, he was in a seriously dangerous spot. The numbers right here tell a huge part of the story. Napoleon's Grande Armée was looking at about 72,000 men. The Allies, they had around 85,000. So any kind of straightforward head-to-head fight would have been a massive and very likely a losing gamble for him. Taking Vienna sounds great, right? But it actually created a huge problem. Napoleon's army was now at the very end of a super long and really vulnerable supply line. And to make things worse, his enemies, the Austrians and Russians, had finally linked up. He knew he couldn't keep his army in the field for long. He had to force one single knockout battle, and it had to be on his terms. And this is where we really get to see Napoleon's genius outwork. Since he knew he probably couldn't win a fair fight, he decided he just wasn't going to have one. Instead, he was going to trick his enemies into fighting the exact battle he wanted them to fight on the ground he chose. What he did next was just a masterclass in deception. First up, he started sending out diplomats, acting like he was desperate for peace talks, which made the Allies really overconfident. Then, he did something that seemed totally crazy. He pulled his troops off the Pratzen Heights, which was the best piece of high ground on the entire battlefield. And finally, he intentionally made his right flank look super weak and exposed, basically begging the Allies to come and attack it. And this quote just shows you how far ahead he was thinking. He wasn't just hoping the Allies would take the bait. He was absolutely sure they would. He figured that in order to smash his weak right flank, they'd have to come down from the high ground in their center. And in that one move, he saw their entire defeat laid out before him. But here's the hidden part of the trap. That supposedly weak flank? It was about to get a massive last-minute reinforcement. Napoleon had ordered one of his best commanders, Marshal Davout, on an unbelievable forced march. His men covered 110 kilometers in just 2 days. Think about that. They were set to arrive just in the nick of time to slam the door shut on the main Allied attack. All right, so the trap is meticulously set. The Allies are moving exactly where Napoleon wants them to. The stage is ready for the final act, the killing blow. At dawn on December 2nd, the Allies did precisely what Napoleon had prayed they would do. The main body of their army started marching down from the Pratzen Heights to crush the French right flank, thinking they were about to destroy a weak, retreating army. And just like that, the trap was sprung. As Napoleon stood watching the Allied center on the heights get thinner and thinner, he knew this was it. This was the moment. All the planning, all the deception, all the risk. It all came down to this. He gave the order he'd been waiting for. And what a moment it was. It's become legendary. The whole battlefield was covered in this thick morning fog, which had hidden Napoleon's main force. But just as he gave the order, the sun burned right through the mist, revealing Marshal Soult's course charging up the slopes of the now empty Pratzen Heights. This became famously known as the Sun of Austerlitz. By seizing that central high ground, Soult's men smashed right into the Allied center and completely shattered it. Suddenly, the main Allied force, which was busy attacking the French right, was cut off from its commanders and its rear. In one single, brilliant move, their entire army was literally split in two. After that, the rest of the battle was really just a brutal mop-up operation. The French just rolled up the separated Allied forces. The victory was total. But the consequences, they would be felt far, far beyond the battlefield. I mean, just look at these numbers. They are absolutely devastating. The Allies lost 36,000 men. That's killed, wounded, or captured. That was almost 40% of their entire army, gone in a day. The French, on the other hand, lost 9,000. This wasn't just a victory, it was the complete annihilation of an army. And the political fallout was just as shocking. Austria was immediately knocked out of the war. Then, the Holy Roman Empire, a political power in Europe for almost 1,000 years, was just dissolved, gone. In its place, Napoleon created a new group of German states that were loyal to France. This one battle completely remade the map of Central Europe. You want to know what it felt like to be on the other side? Well, you can't get much clearer than this quote from the Tsar of Russia himself. His words just perfectly capture that feeling of complete helplessness, that awe that Napoleon's enemies must have felt when facing his genius. But I think the final word really has to go to the British Prime Minister William Pitt. Back in London, when he heard what happened at Austerlitz, he immediately understood what it meant. The old way of doing things, the old map of Europe, it was gone, shattered in a single day. A victory so perfect, so total, that for the next 10 years, the map of Europe would belong to one man, Napoleon.